Killers of the Flower Moon is directed by Martin Scorsese and stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone. Members of the Osage tribe in the United States are murdered under mysterious circumstances in the 1920s, sparking a major FBI investigation. How can I sit in front of this camera without loving Martin Scorsese? The man is a filmmaking genius. When he strikes gold, he makes some of the best films ever made, and even when his films are misses, they are still better than most films ever made. He is such an icon in the filmmaking industry that even when he makes a good film, a just good film, people hate it because people know just how amazing Martin Scorsese can be. If that is not the biggest compliment that someone can give you about a film that's one of your lessers in your catalog, I don't know what is. And with this movie being a major passion project for Martin Scorsese, needless to say, I was hugely excited for this film. And once again, he hits it out of the park as always. Martin Scorsese probably has one of the best records of any film director. There are flaws, don't get me wrong, but man is the good stuff good. First of all, let's talk about the performances. These are some of the best performances of the entire year. DiCaprio brings his A game to this film. He gives such a passionate performance, yet at the same time, when he has to go very subdued for a lot of his scenes, he delivers it with so many layers to his complex character that just one look of his multiple little subdued expressions, you can see so much history behind it and so much of an understanding of this character whose background we don't know a whole lot of, but you get the feeling DiCaprio knows everything about. Lily Gladstone is terrific in this film. She never says too much and she never overexerts herself. She is probably the most subdued actor in the entire movie, but in her face you can always see the wheels turning. She is always the smartest character in the room, even though everyone else is constantly taking advantage of her. She's never a naive character, but she's always the most good-hearted, and she's surrounded by so much corruption that eventually it just wears down on her. But once again, Robert De Niro proves why he is one of the greatest actors who have ever lived. The man is 80 years old now, and he still comes off as the most intimidating presence in this entire film. In one moment, he can come off as so welcoming and kind-hearted, but in the very next scene, you just see how all of that kind-heartedness is a front. And as the movie goes on, you constantly have to think, is this a genuine moment, or is he putting up yet another front? And that is yet another big plus of this movie, and what is, in my opinion, the big reason why Martin Scorsese's films are always so good. Because of the fact that he always focuses on the complexity of corruption. You never see everyone as good, but you never see them all as evil. They all have their own motivations, they all have their own lighthearted moments, but none of them are ever completely good or evil. They're just people presented in the most entertaining and interesting complex lights. And the characters in this film, especially DiCaprio's character, might be some of the most complex and morally gray characters Scorsese has ever devised. And then there are all the other obvious great things that come with a Martin Scorsese movie. The cinematography, gorgeous. There are so many great wide landscape shots, and there are just so many good tracking shots. There are so many scenes in this film where the camera work and the amount of information in frame gives off so much emotion and so much story that there doesn't need to be any dialogue. It can just be that frame or that bit of camera work. And I know it's kind of obvious for me to say this because hey, it's a visual medium film, show don't tell, you know, but at the same time, you just see so many filmmakers who just kind of forget that and go for over-explaining instead of just showing. And Scorsese is just one of those filmmaking veterans that remembers and follows that classic filmmaking rule. And the music itself is also fantastic. It's a great modern Western score that really makes you feel the gravity of the situation, yet puts the film in a time where there can be cowboys and Native Americans and all of that corruption, yet all of that old-timey aesthetics. Alright, so those are all of the fantastic things about this movie. Now, what didn't I like? And if I'm being honest, all of the things that I didn't like about this movie can be summed up in one umbrella complaint. This movie is long, man. This movie is 3.5 hours long, and man, can you feel that at times. Now, don't get me wrong. I am one of the few people who I know who loves when a movie goes overly long. However, I love when it goes overly long and justifies it by presenting something new. The Batman had a film noir-style detective story that we've never seen these characters in before. John Wick Chapter 4 had multiple different action set pieces, each with their own styles to keep the action fresh. Even Oppenheimer managed to make the story of this one man feel so large and so important to this day and age that it felt more epic than most films in the past decade. This movie does everything great that a Martin Scorsese movie should do, but adds nothing new to the table. In fact, 6 years ago, there was a movie that came out called Wind River with very similar themes to this movie and had half the runtime. And along with that, in the last 5 minutes of the movie, there is an odd teleplay style exposition dump that really took me out of the movie. Throughout the entire film, it's so realistic and down to earth, you feel like you're actually there, and yet in the last 5 minutes of the film, it decides to pull you out of that realism and put you in the making of a radio show for some reason. I don't know whether they just ran out of money or they just didn't know how to end it, but either way, it really threw me off and it felt more like something Wes Anderson would do rather than Martin Scorsese style. And that's really the biggest problem of the film. Throughout the entire movie, I'm constantly reminded of the filmmakers that Martin Scorsese inspired but pushed the envelope. Here, Martin Scorsese is doing everything that made him legendary, but adding nothing new. That said, however, as I said earlier, Martin Scorsese's worst movies are still better than most filmmakers' best. And while I don't think this is Martin Scorsese's best film, it is still better than a lot of movies nowadays. The performances are brilliant, the characters are interesting, the cinematography is gorgeous, and the music is great. However, the pacing dragged because it never felt like Scorsese was adding anything new to justify the film's 3.5 hour runtime. If you love Martin Scorsese and all of his brilliant aesthetics, I highly recommend this movie. But if you want a film that is not 3.5 hours long but has similar stories and themes, I highly recommend Wind River. I'm gonna give Killers of the Flower Moon an A. Fantastic film all around, but Scorsese has done better. Well guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite Martin Scorsese movie? For me, hands down, it is Goodfellas. That movie is up there with The Godfather as a mob film masterpiece. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best, and don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date for all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.